So you probably saw Laurence Fox lost his defamation case. But why was that, and what's likely to happen next? And also it gives us an opportunity to talk about some interesting and obscure elements of defamation law. But by way of background, Mr. Fox was tweeting away, as he does, and he got into a bit of a Twitter spat with some people. And they accused him of being racist. And in response, he accused them of something that begins with P that YouTube doesn't like me saying, but the P word. So they sued him for defamation, and he counterclaimed. So this all went off to court. Now, what was interesting is Fox put in an application for the trial to be in front of a jury. And it's quite an interesting argument, because since 2013, there hasn't been an automatic right to a jury. And normally it's just a judge-only trial. But what his argument was, he said, well, I have been accused of being a racist. However, the judiciary used something called the Equal Treatment Bench Book. And that uses what we call the Laurence test for defamation, for racism, which says that something is racist if anybody thinks it is racist. And his argument was, well, if you apply that test, then by definition, I am going to lose. So it should be what, your average person in the street defines as racist, and that should be the test. However, he was knocked back on that. And the reason was that the judge said, well, defamation is the one area where judges and indeed lawyers are specifically told not to think like lawyers, because the test is, would the allegation lower somebody's reputation in the eyes of right-minded people? And they're supposed to apply a sort of, average person test, not what would lawyers do, because, like they say, lawyers tend to overanalyze words and get all technical. But the point in defamation is the meaning of a word is what's the obvious meaning, not what's not a sort of meaning you can argue for. What would your average person, not too open to gossip, but not too not too naive either, what would they think? But judges now always, they put themselves into the shoes of such people. So the argument was, well, no, the trial judge will assess the word based on, what an average person would think, and not what's written in the bench book. So he was knocked back. So anyway, this went to trial. The claimants succeeded, because what you have to show is, you have to show that, first of all, the allegation is untrue, and it was accepted it was untrue, that there was nothing here. But it also has to cause serious harm, or tend to cause serious harm. And the judge here said, well, obviously accusing somebody of that, it's one of the most serious allegations you can mean. And interestingly, they actually applied, when applying the reasonable person test, the judge said, even prisoners don't like such offenders. And they actually said, okay, that is possibly stretching the definition of right-minded people a little bit, but even if prisoners don't like people on Rule 43, that just shows how scurrilous such allegations are. Also, the people he'd actually defamed, if people Google their names, unfortunately, they shared their names with some people who had actually been convicted of such offences. So anybody Googling them would think, oh, this is probably true. So because of that, their claim succeeded. But the counterclaim didn't. What the reason for that is, they didn't actually look at, because the defence was, well, it's true you're a racist, or at least it's a reasonable opinion that an honest person could hold. Oh gosh, stop ringing me, people. Excuse me 1 second. This is a client. That is an opinion that people could hold. But actually, what Fox lost on was, the judge said, you fail on the serious harm part, because under the 2013 Act, it actually says a statement is only defamatory if it causes serious harm. And then the trouble with Laurence Fox is, he has effectively torched his own reputation. So because, your average person probably already has a fairly low opinion of him, it couldn't get any lower because, you know, with all his sort of, you know, blacking up and some of his comments that he's made in sort of the media, they said, well, everybody already probably thinks he's a racist anyway. So, you know, somebody else alleging it can't make it any worse. What they did say, because Fox also pleaded what we call, over here we call it tit for tat. In America they call it self-defense, which is if somebody accuses you of something and you deny it, that can't generally form a defamation claim. So if, you know, you are accused of something and you say, oh, that's all lies and you can't trust this person and they make it all up, that's absolutely fine. You can't sue and say, you've called me a liar, I'm suing for defamation. And you can actually go quite far on that. You know, you're allowed a robust defence, but you can't go beyond merely denying the offence. Now, you can speculate against somebody's motive. You can sort of say, I think they're only doing this for these reasons. However, malice in the defamation sense, that is where you know something isn't true, can defeat even that defence. So if you speculate about somebody's motive, that's probably okay. But if you know that motive isn't true, then you actually lose that as well. So the court didn't actually get round to sort of defining, you know, whether he was a racist or what we mean by racist or racism, because they said we don't need to do that. I don't even need to examine whether it's, you know, an opinion people could hold about this guy, because you fail at the first hurdle, which is showing serious harm. And you've failed to do that because of your existing reputation. Because that's the thing to remember, defamation is about reputation, not character. It doesn't actually matter what you are like in real life, it's what people actually think of you. So that's now going off for a remedies hearing, where they're going to assess the damages. The damages are likely to be quite high just because this is one of the most serious accusations you can do. I mean, wouldn't surprise me. You know, I'm going to make one of my predictions, and if it's right, I'll redo this video. You know, I'll quote back to this video, and if it's wrong, I'll just ignore it. But I think they're looking at about least 80k each. But what's not helping is Mr. Fox has not taken this lying down, and he's basically been saying more things about the claimants. Now, the problem with that is defamation is one area where we have what we call aggravated damages, which is the damages can be increased by your attitude to the litigation. So if in a court case you repeat the allegations and you stick to your guns and double down, then that can increase the damages. Now, going out and standing on the court steps and effectively just bad-mouthing people even further, no doubt the claimant's lawyers will be highlighting all this. And it wouldn't surprise me if the judge says, yeah, that's bumped the damages up. They'll probably also go for some sort of an injunction to stop him making these allegations. What's interesting is, they said, it's one of these things where people could have avoided all this just by a relatively simple expediency. Because they said, with this tit for tat thing, had Fox expressed it in terms of, I am no more a racist than you are a P word, then that would have been fine because he wouldn't have been suggesting there was any truth to the allegation. So remember that in future, and this is why, you know, I used to do all the sort of libel pre-reading, you know, when I was a night lawyer for those newspapers. And this is the sort of thing we would do because sometimes just tweaking a word in a sentence can be the difference between it being defamatory and not, but you can still get the same point across. So there you go. If anybody wants me to follow up and go into more detail about this case, because, you know, there are some quite interesting aspects to it, let me know in the comments. If you have any specific queries or you just want a sort of, you know, follow-up video generally. But anyway, as always, hope you found that vaguely useful, vaguely interesting, vaguely accurate. I'm in Penzance at the moment, and behind me is Mounts Bay. There's a little dot on the horizon. That's St Michael's Mount. A better photographer than me could have zoomed in on it so you could see it properly. But anyway, hope you get the gist of it. You can always Google it if you want an actual, you know, nice, pretty picture.